The scream tore through the mansion like thunder. "Sir, this little girl lived with me in the orphanage." The black maid's trembling voice echoed down the marble halls, her eyes wide in disbelief as she stared at the portrait hanging high on the wall, a young girl with blonde hair and a smile that looked far too familiar. It wasn't supposed to be like this. For Clara Johnson, this was just another day, another cleaning job in another rich man's house. The Williams mansion was famous in Los Angeles, massive, ancient, and filled with more secrets than light. Every worker whispered about the owner, Mr. Arthur Williams, a billionaire who rarely left his study and never spoke about his past. But today, something was different. The moment Clara stepped inside, her chest tightened, as if the air itself remembered something she didn't. The chandeliers sparkled above her. The air smelled faintly of old wood and roses, and portraits of strangers stared down from every wall. Yet one caught her breath, a portrait of a small girl in a white dress, holding a red rose. Her hands shook. Her mop fell to the floor with a loud clatter. Her heart pounded. No, it can't be. Memories flashed before her eyes. A cold orphanage, laughter echoing in empty halls, a little girl named Lily who used to braid Clara's hair and whisper stories about how one day her real family would come for her. But one night, Lily was gone. No note, no goodbye, just gone. Clara ran closer to the portrait, tears flooding her eyes. "Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's you." From the grand staircase above, a deep voice interrupted. "Excuse me, miss, what did you say?" Clara turned sharply. A man in a tailored black suit stood there, tall, gray-haired, and calm like a ghost who had forgotten how to feel. Mr. Arthur Williams himself. "Sir," she stammered, pointing to the portrait. "This girl, she lived with me in St. Mary's Orphanage, Los Angeles. Her name was Lily. She was my friend." Arthur's sharp blue eyes narrowed. "You must be mistaken. That portrait is of my late daughter, Isabella Williams. She died 20 years ago." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. Clara shook her head. "No, sir. I'd never forget her face. She was alive, kind, and full of dreams." "You say she died, but how?" Arthur's voice cracked slightly. "Car accident. On her 10th birthday. We never recovered her body." Clara's knees weakened. "Never found her body," she repeated under her breath. "Then maybe she wasn't dead." Arthur frowned. "That's impossible." But inside, something in his voice wavered, something uncertain. Later that night, Clara couldn't shake the image of that portrait. When the mansion grew silent and the night deepened, she found herself walking the halls again, her footsteps echoing softly. The mansion was too big, too perfect, and too cold. She passed locked doors, old paintings, and dusty furniture covered with white sheets. And then, she noticed something odd. One painting had been removed from the wall recently. The outline was still clean against the faded wallpaper. Behind it, she saw a small keyhole. Her curiosity burned stronger than her fear. She fetched her cleaning keys. One of them, a tiny gold key, fit perfectly. With a soft click, the wall creaked open. Inside was a narrow passage leading to a basement staircase, dark and cold, as if untouched for decades. Clara's heart raced as she descended. The air smelled of dust and memories. At the bottom stood a heavy iron door. She pushed it open slowly, and what she saw made her gasp. A room filled with children's toys. Old dolls, small dresses, drawings, all neatly arranged as if waiting for someone to return. And on the dusty table lay a small silver locket, the same one Lily used to wear. Clara picked it up with trembling hands. Inside was a faded photo, Lily and Clara, smiling together at the orphanage. Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks. "She was here," she whispered. "She lived here." Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind her. Arthur stood at the door, holding a candle. His face was pale. "What are you doing here?" Clara turned, her voice shaking. "You lied to me. Your daughter didn't die. She was taken. I don't know how, but she lived in that orphanage. She told me her family would find her one day, and you never did." Arthur's expression hardened, but pain flickered in his eyes. "You don't understand. My wife, she couldn't accept the truth. Isabella disappeared during a charity event. The police searched for months, but nothing. My wife lost her mind after that. She died believing Isabella was still alive." Clara held out the locket. "Then this is your proof." Arthur's hands trembled as he took it. He stared at the photo for a long moment. tears filling his eyes for the first time in decades. "Isabella," he whispered. Then, slowly, he looked at Clara. "Miss Johnson, if what you're saying is true, then someone took my daughter, someone close to us." The old mansion seemed to hum with secrets. The walls themselves felt alive, whispering memories neither of them could bear to remember. Clara took a deep breath. "Then we find out who." And just like that, two strangers, a grieving billionaire and a broken maid, were bound by the same mystery. But what they were about to uncover would change both of their lives forever. That night, thunder rolled over the mansion like angry drums. The sky flashed white through the tall glass windows, and the rain fell hard enough to drown out every whisper, except one. Clara couldn't sleep. Every creak in the old house sounded like a cry. Every gust of wind felt like someone was calling her name. Downstairs, Mr. Arthur Williams sat alone in his study, the locket still clutched in his hand. The firelight flickered across his face, revealing the deep sorrow behind his eyes. He hadn't felt this alive, or this haunted, in 20 years. That maid, that woman, Clara Johnson. She'd spoken with such certainty, such pain. Could it really be true? Could Isabella have survived all these years, only to end up in an orphanage? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the study door. "Sir," Clara said softly, stepping in. "I couldn't sleep. Something doesn't feel right in this house." Arthur glanced up. "You've already discovered a secret room, Miss Johnson. How much stranger can this place get?" Clara hesitated. "It's not the room, sir. It's the feeling. The walls. It's like someone's still here." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You sound like my wife did, before she lost herself to grief." Clara looked at the locket on the desk. "Grief doesn't make you crazy, sir. It just makes you see things others can't." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For the first time, he saw not just a maid standing before him, but a woman who had lived with loss too deep for words. Arthur nodded slowly. "You said you grew up with her. Lily, or Isabella, as we called her. Tell me everything you remember." Clara took a seat across from him. The storm outside rumbled like distant memory. "She came to the orphanage when I was 12. They said she was abandoned in a hospital parking lot. She didn't talk for weeks, just cried at night and clutched that silver locket. When I asked about it, she told me her mommy gave it to her before the men took her away." Arthur's face went pale. "Men? What men?" "She never said," Clara replied. "But one night, she told me she remembered a car, a woman screaming, and a man in a black coat. Then, the next morning, she was gone." Arthur stood abruptly, pacing the floor. "A man in a black coat. My wife mentioned something similar before she died. She said Isabella was taken, not lost. The police said it was grief talking. But what if she was right all along?" Clara looked at him steadily. "Then whoever took her knew your family. Someone close enough to make her disappear without leaving a trace." A bolt of lightning cracked outside, lighting the room in an eerie blue. And in that flash, Arthur saw something in the corner of the room that made his blood run cold. A small figure, watching. When the light faded, it was gone. Arthur's hand trembled. "Did you see that?" Clara turned sharply. "See what?" He blinked, rubbing his eyes. "Nothing. Maybe it's this storm. Maybe it's..." But his voice trailed off. The faint sound of laughter, childish, soft, and distant, floated through the air. Clara froze. "You heard that too, right?" Arthur nodded slowly, his face pale. They followed the sound through the hallway. The mansion was darker than before, the chandeliers swaying slightly from the wind. The laughter grew faint, leading them toward the east wing, the part of the house Arthur had sealed after his wife's death. He hesitated at the door. "No one has been in here for years," he whispered. Clara reached for the handle. "Then maybe it's time someone did." The door creaked open, revealing a dusty hallway filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. The air smelled of mold and forgotten perfume. And then they saw it, another portrait. Not of Isabella as a child, but as a young girl, maybe 10 years old. Her expression was calm, almost sad. And in her hand, she held a red rose. Clara whispered, "That's the same rose she used to draw at the orphanage." Arthur stepped closer, his breath trembling. "This painting wasn't here before. I would have remembered." As they stared, the laughter came again, this time closer. They turned. The candlelight flickered wildly as a cold breeze swept through the hall. A door at the end slowly swung open on its own. Arthur whispered, "That leads to the old servants' quarters." They walked toward it, hearts pounding. Inside, the room was small and filled with dust. But there was something strange. On the wall, written faintly in chalk, were the words, "I tried to come home, but they wouldn't let me." Clara covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" Arthur's voice broke. "Isabella." He stumbled forward, running his fingers across the faded writing. The letters smeared beneath his touch, proof that they'd been written by a trembling hand. Perhaps years ago, perhaps recently. In the corner of the room sat a broken wooden toy, a small horse, its legs snapped off. Clara recognized it instantly. That was hers. She used to carry it everywhere. Arthur fell to his knees. If she came back here, if she tried to reach us, his voice trailed off, strangled by emotion. But Clara's instincts screamed something else. "Sir," she said quietly, "this writing, look closely. The dust around it is disturbed. It's recent. Someone's been in this room not long ago." Arthur's head snapped up. "You think she's alive?" Clara's heart pounded. "I don't know, but someone wants us to believe she is." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the floor above. Both of them froze. Arthur whispered, "The attic." Without a word, they ran upstairs, the thunder roaring behind them. The old wooden stairs groaned under their feet as they reached the top. The attic door stood half open, swaying gently. Clara pushed it open, and there, on the dusty floor, lay a small box wrapped in a faded white cloth. Arthur knelt, unwrapping it with trembling fingers. Inside was a newspaper clipping dated 20 years ago. "William's family heiress still missing, case declared cold." And beneath it, a photo of a smiling man in a black coat. Arthur's jaw clenched. "I know this man. He was my business partner," Clara whispered. "Then maybe he's the one who took her." Arthur looked at her, fury mixing with heartbreak in his eyes. "Then we're going to find him. And if he's still alive, he's going to tell me what he did with my daughter." But as they turned to leave, the candlelight flickered again, this time revealing something carved into the attic wall. 3 words, deep and desperate. "Daddy, help me." The rain had stopped by morning, but the mansion still felt haunted by the night before. The faint scent of candle smoke and damp wood lingered in the air. Arthur hadn't slept at all. He sat in his study, staring at the photo of the man in the black coat. Charles Everett, his former business partner and once his closest friend. Clara entered quietly, her eyes tired but alert. "You found something, didn't you?" Arthur nodded slowly. "Charles was more than a partner. He was my wife's cousin. He knew everything about our family, our schedules, our home, even Isabella's school routes. When she disappeared, he offered to help the investigation. But after the police called it a cold case, he vanished, left the country." Clara frowned. "And you never saw him again?" Arthur clenched his jaw. "No, but I received letters, and signed, postmarked from random states. They stopped a few years after my wife's death. I thought it was someone's sick joke." Clara sat across from him. "What if those letters weren't jokes, sir? What if they were clues?" He looked at her sharply. "You think he was taunting me?" Clara shook her head. "Maybe not taunting. Maybe testing you, to see if you'd still look for her." Arthur went silent. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the quiet ticking of the old grandfather clock filled the room. Then suddenly, Clara's eyes drifted toward the fireplace. Above it, half hidden behind an antique clock, was a small, yellowed envelope. She pointed. "Sir, what's that?" Arthur blinked. "I've never noticed it before." He stood, reaching for the envelope. The paper was brittle, almost ready to crumble. When he opened it, a folded letter fell out, and a photo. The photo showed a girl, maybe 10 or 11, standing in front of a small rural house. Her smile was faint, uncertain, but there was no mistaking her face. It was Isabella. Arthur's breath caught in his throat. "She's alive," he whispered. The letter was handwritten, faded but legible. Clara leaned in as Arthur read aloud. "Arthur, if you're reading this, then you've finally looked where you never dared to. She's not dead, but you'll have to decide if finding her will bring you peace or destroy what's left of you. Go to Redwood Town. Ask for the old Miller barn. You'll find the truth there." There was no signature. Arthur looked at Clara. "Redwood Town, that's 2 hours north of here." Clara stood instantly. "Then what are we waiting for?" He hesitated. "If this is a trap," she cut him off, firm and certain, "then it's one worth walking into." For her. Within an hour, they were on the road. Arthur driving his black Rolls-Royce through the misty countryside, Clara sitting beside him, the locket clutched tightly in her hand. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, thick with the weight of everything they didn't say. When they reached Redwood Town, the morning fog clung to the ground like smoke. The streets were quiet, lined with small shops and shuttered windows. At the far end stood an old, abandoned barn, its wooden walls gray and splintered, its doors hanging loosely on their hinges. Arthur parked nearby. This must be it. They stepped out, the wind biting cold. As they approached the barn, Clara noticed something strange. The door was slightly open, swinging with the breeze. She pushed it wider. Inside was darkness, and the faint smell of burnt wood and old hay. Arthur lit his flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing dusty boxes, rusted tools, and old furniture. And then, at the far end, they saw it. A chair, with ropes tied around its legs. Clara's heart skipped. Someone was held here. Arthur's voice trembled. Isabella. He moved closer. On the ground near the chair lay another photograph, this time of a teenage girl, bound but looking straight at the camera with defiant eyes. Written across the bottom in black ink were the words, "You should have protected her." Arthur's knees nearly gave out. He dropped the flashlight, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He did this. Charles did this. Clara picked up the photo. "Sir, look at the background. That wallpaper behind her. It's not this barn. It's a room." Arthur looked closer. "My God, that's the wallpaper from the east wing of my mansion." For a moment, neither of them breathed. Clara whispered, "He didn't just take her. He brought her back." Arthur's voice cracked. "He must have hidden her in this house. While we lived upstairs, the horror of it sank deep into both of them." Clara said softly, "Sir, that writing we found, the daddy, help me, she must have carved that when she escaped from him. Maybe she was hiding in those walls." Arthur pressed his hands against his face. "All these years my daughter was here, in my own home." Clara's eyes glistened, and no one ever heard her. They searched the barn further and found one more thing, a small journal tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were scattered, shaky entries written by a child's hand. "He says Daddy doesn't want me. The man smells like smoke. I saw the big stairs again today. The lady with the red hair cried for me. She said I was gone. If anyone finds this, tell Daddy I'm still here." Clara's tears fell freely. "Sir, she was alive for years after she disappeared, and she tried to reach you." Arthur's voice broke. "We have to find where he took her next. Maybe she's still." But before he could finish, a sound echoed from outside. Footsteps. Clara turned sharply. Through the cracks of the barn wall, she saw a silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a black coat. Arthur froze. It can't be. The figure stopped just beyond the doorway. For a moment, all they could hear was the wind howling through the open fields. Then, slowly, the man stepped forward, his face coming into the light. It was Charles Everett. His hair was white now, his eyes hollow but sharp. He looked at Arthur with a cold, almost calm expression. "You finally came," he said. "Took you long enough." Arthur's voice shook with fury. "Where is she, Charles? What did you do to my daughter?" Charles gave a faint, bitter smile. "Your daughter? You mean the girl you forgot? The one you left to rot in that house?" Arthur's hand curled into a fist. "Don't you dare!" Charles raised a hand. "You don't know the truth, Arthur. None of you did." Clara stepped forward, her voice fierce. "Then tell us. Now." Charles looked between them, his gaze dark. "You want the truth? Then follow me back to the mansion. Because everything you think you know about Isabella is a lie." The drive back to the mansion was silent, thick with tension and fear. The storm clouds had rolled in again, darkening the sky as the car cut through the long, winding road back toward Los Angeles. Arthur's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Clara sat rigid, her eyes fixed on Charles Everett in the back seat. His calm, almost unbothered expression made her skin crawl. Finally, Arthur spoke, his voice low and sharp. "Start talking, Charles. If you don't tell me everything by the time we reach my gates, I swear I'll." Charles interrupted with a hollow laugh. "Arthur, after 20 years, you still think you're the victim here?" Arthur glared at him through the rearview mirror. "You took my daughter. You destroyed my family." Charles leaned forward slightly. "I saved her, Arthur. From you." The words hit like ice. Clara turned sharply. "Saved her? From her own father?" Charles met her eyes. "You think he's some grieving saint? You don't know what this man did behind those marble walls. His wife wasn't the only one losing her mind. Arthur slammed the brakes, the car skidding to a stop on the empty road. "Watch your mouth," he shouted. But Charles only smirked. "You want to know the truth? Fine. 20 years ago, your wife called me in a panic. She said you'd lost your temper again, that Isabella had seen something she shouldn't have. A fight, a shove, a fall down the stairs." Arthur froze. His breath caught in his chest. "That's a lie." Charles leaned back. "Is it? Your wife told me you covered it up. That the girl wasn't dead, just hurt. She begged me to take her away before you could finish what you started." Arthur's voice broke. "You're twisting everything. I never touched her." Clara stared at him, uncertain, her heart racing. "Sir, is any of that true?" Arthur's voice trembled with rage and pain. "No. I loved my daughter more than anything. My wife, God rest her soul, she was fragile, paranoid. After Isabella disappeared, she blamed me for everything." "Charles is lying." Charles gave a bitter smile. "Believe whatever you want. But I took the girl because I had to. I hid her in that east wing, right under your nose. I planned to tell you when things calmed down, but your wife found out. She went mad. She tried to take Isabella back, but she fell ill before she could. By the time I returned to get the girl, she was gone." The air inside the car felt heavy, suffocating. Clara's head spun. "So you're saying Isabella ran away?" Charles nodded slowly. "Or someone helped her escape. Either way, I never saw her again." Arthur's voice was low, broken. "You expect me to believe that? That you saved her, only to lose her?" Charles stared out the window. "Believe what you want. But if you want proof, you'll find it where it all began, in your wife's old room." Arthur slammed his foot on the gas, fury boiling inside him. "Then that's where we'll end this." The mansion loomed like a shadow as they pulled up to the gates. The sky cracked open, rain pouring down in sheets as thunder rolled overhead. The three of them stepped out, the storm swallowing every sound except the pounding of their hearts. Inside, the house felt colder than ever. The flickering lights cast long shadows on the marble floors as Arthur led them toward the east wing. The door creaked open, the same door that had stayed locked since his wife's death. The smell of old perfume and dust filled the air. The room was untouched, frozen in time. Clara's eyes wandered over the photographs on the vanity table. Pictures of Isabella as a baby, her mother smiling beside her. But something else caught her attention. Behind the mirror was a small tear in the wallpaper, and beneath it, a hidden compartment. Clara reached in and pulled out a leather-bound journal, covered in dust. Arthur's eyes widened. "My wife's diary." He opened it carefully. The first few pages were filled with normal entries, parties, dinners, charity events. But as he turned further, the handwriting grew frantic, uneven. "Arthur doesn't see it, but I know something's wrong with him. He keeps talking to himself at night." Isabella heard him shouting at shadows. "I'm scared. He says she reminds him of someone." "Who?" Arthur's face went pale as he read. "She was sick. She didn't know what she was writing." Charles whispered, "Keep reading." Arthur flipped to the last page. His hands trembled. "I can't keep lying. The man in the mirror isn't Arthur anymore. If anything happens to me, tell the truth. He's hiding something beneath the house." That's where the girl's voice comes from at night. Clara stepped back, her eyes wide. "Beneath the house." Arthur's voice cracked. "She was delusional. There's nothing under this house." But Charles's face darkened. "Oh, there's always something under a house this old." Without waiting, he turned and stormed out of the room, heading toward the basement staircase. Clara followed, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Arthur trailed behind them, shouting for him to stop. The basement was colder than before, the smell of earth stronger now. Charles stopped at the far wall, the same wall that had once led to the secret room of toys. But this time, he pushed harder against the back panel, and it gave way, revealing another door, one made of metal, with rusted hinges and a heavy lock. Clara's breath caught. This wasn't here before. Charles grinned faintly. "No, because someone didn't want it to be found." Arthur's voice trembled. "What are you doing?" Charles ignored him and forced the lock open with a crowbar. The door groaned, and a cold wave of air rushed out, damp, stale, and heavy with time. Inside was darkness. Then the flashlight beam caught something that made Clara gasp. A child's bed, a broken doll, and a name carved into the stone wall, Isabella. Arthur staggered forward, his hand shaking as he touched the carving. "No, no, no, no," Charles whispered. "This is where she lived. For months. Maybe years. Clara knelt beside the bed. A small wooden box sat beneath it. Inside were scraps of paper, drawings of flowers, hearts, and a little girl holding hands with two people labeled Mommy and Miss Clara. Tears streamed down Clara's face. She remembered me. Arthur dropped to his knees, his whole body trembling. Why didn't I hear her? Why didn't I know? Charles's voice was quiet, almost regretful. Because sometimes, guilt blinds louder than truth. The silence that followed was deafening. The three of them stood surrounded by the ghosts of the past, and one unbearable truth. But before anyone could speak again, Clara noticed something strange at the back of the room. A narrow tunnel, freshly dug. She turned to Arthur and Charles. Someone's been down here recently. Charles's face darkened. Then maybe the past isn't finished with us yet. The tunnel stretched like a dark throat beneath the earth, damp and narrow. The air smelled of metal and soil. Clara went first, her flashlight trembling in her hand, the beam cutting through the cold blackness. Behind her came Arthur, breathing heavily, and Charles, his eyes flicking nervously from wall to wall. For several minutes, they moved in silence until the passage opened into a small underground chamber, one neither of the men had ever seen. In the center stood a wooden table covered with old newspapers, photographs, and candle wax. Clara moved closer and froze. Every paper on the table bore the same headline: William's family heiress still missing. Each clipping had words circled in red ink: lies, cover-up, deception. And beside them, dozens of sketches, all of a girl's face. Isabella's face. Arthur whispered, "What is this place?" Charles's eyes darkened. The room where truth was buried. Clara lifted one of the papers. On the back was a recent date, only 6 months old, and handwriting in black marker. The house isn't done remembering. She turned toward the far wall and gasped. A set of photos were pinned there, each taken secretly. The first showed Clara herself entering the mansion for work. Another showed Arthur walking the halls at night. The most recent one sent a chill down her spine. It showed all three of them, standing in the east wing just hours ago. Arthur whispered hoarsely, "Someone's been watching us." Suddenly, a faint sound echoed through the tunnel, a voice. Soft, fragile, singing. Clara froze, the flashlight shaking in her hand. "Do you hear that?" Arthur's heart raced. "It can't be." The voice grew clearer. A child's lullaby. The same one Isabella's mother used to hum every night. The melody drifted through the tunnel like a ghost. They followed the sound deeper until it led them to another door, smaller than the last. Clara pushed it open. Inside, the air was warmer, flickering with candlelight. And standing in the middle of the room was a woman, maybe in her late 20s, her hair dark and tangled, her skin pale as moonlight. In her trembling hands, she held a small, worn-out doll. Arthur's breath caught. "Isabella." The woman turned slowly, her eyes wide and distant, like someone waking from a long dream. "Daddy," she whispered. Arthur stumbled forward, tears streaming down his face. "My God. Isabella, it's me. It's your father." Clara's heart twisted as she watched the reunion, but something in Isabella's eyes wasn't right. There was recognition, yes, but also confusion, fear. Charles stepped closer, his voice breaking. "I looked for you. I tried to protect you, Bella." Isabella flinched at the name, her voice small. "You said Daddy didn't want me anymore." Arthur turned sharply. "What?" Charles froze. "I never." But Isabella's voice grew louder, trembling with rage and pain. "You locked me away. You said I was a mistake. You said I didn't deserve to see the light again." Charles shook his head violently. No, that wasn't me. It was your mother, she told me." Arthur roared, grabbing him by the collar. "You monster. You took her life from her." Charles struggled to speak, gasping. "Arthur, stop. She's not telling you everything." Clara rushed forward, trying to separate them. "Stop it. Both of you." But Isabella screamed, a raw, broken sound that shook the walls. "You're all liars. All of you." She dropped the doll, backing against the wall, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "You left me there in the dark. You never came." Arthur's voice softened, his own tears falling. "I didn't know, sweetheart. I didn't know where you were. If I could trade my life for yours, I would." Isabella's breathing slowed. Her eyes softened for a moment. Then she looked past him, toward Clara. "You were there," she whispered. "You used to braid my hair." Clara nodded, choking back sobs. "Yes, baby. It's me." Clara, I never stopped thinking about you. Isabella smiled faintly, the first real smile in decades. I waited so long for someone to remember me. Then, suddenly, the ground trembled, a deep rumble from somewhere above. Dust fell from the ceiling. Charles looked around, alarmed. This tunnel isn't stable. Arthur pulled Isabella close. We have to get out. They ran, the walls shaking around them. Rocks tumbled from above, the candles flickering violently. Clara grabbed Isabella's hand, guiding her through the darkness. Charles followed behind, limping, coughing from the dust. Halfway through the tunnel, a beam collapsed, cutting them off. Arthur and Isabella were on one side, Clara and Charles on the other. Arthur shouted, Clara, go around the east entrance. Get help. Clara nodded, her eyes filling with panic. Hold on. But Charles didn't move. He stared at the fallen debris, then at Clara. He'll never forgive me. Maybe I don't deserve to leave. Clara grabbed his arm. You can still make this right. Charles's voice cracked. I already did. Years ago, I left the key, the one you found. I wanted him to know she wasn't gone. For a moment, he smiled, tired, sad, at peace. Then, before Clara could stop him, he turned back into the tunnel, toward the collapsing chamber. Tell her I tried, he said softly. The walls gave way with a roar. By the time Clara reached the east entrance with help, the tunnel had caved in completely. Arthur and Isabella were pulled out alive, barely. But Charles Everett was gone, buried beneath the mansion's secrets forever. Days later, the mansion stood silent again. The police came and went, reporters swarmed, and the story of the lost heiress of Los Angeles filled every headline. But none of that mattered to Arthur. He sat on the porch each night beside Isabella, holding her hand, as if afraid that letting go would make her vanish again. Clara stayed too, not as a maid anymore, but as family. Some wounds never healed, but they learned to breathe again. Isabella spoke little, her memories fractured and fragile. Yet sometimes, late at night, she would hum the same lullaby, the one that had guided them through the dark. On one quiet evening, as the sun set over the mansion, Arthur looked at Clara and whispered, If you hadn't walked into my house that day, I never would have known my own daughter still lived. Clara smiled softly. Sometimes fate doesn't knock, sir. It screams. Arthur laughed weakly, his eyes glistening. Then thank God you were here to listen. And somewhere deep inside the mansion, beneath the floors, behind the walls, the echoes of a child's laughter finally faded into peace. The house, after 20 long years, was quiet again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Every click helps us bring you more untold tales that stay with you long after the video ends.